Real-world computer programming for kids of all ages. Step 40. Populating the states table with data, Part 2. Welcome back, all. We have gotten a good start on populating our states table. We will dive right back into it and finish that up. Update table with the population. We have the 2020 population data in a text file that looks like this, and it shows the first 10 and number 50, several columns of data. I had to change it a little because it contained 52 entries, including Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., neither of which are states. So I stripped those two out and updated the rankings from number 34 on, so that there were only 50, not 52 in the list. And besides that, what a mess and tangled web somebody wove. All we want is the first and third columns, rank and 2020 population. Actually, we need the second one, state name, too, because we'll need to reference it to see which rows we need to update in the states table. We could programmatically look for the first % sign in each line and delete everything from there to the right, but in this case, it will actually be quicker to just bite the bullet and manually strip everything past the third column out. After doing that, we only have those three columns we need. So let's load this file into our utility, loop through it, and update the corresponding records in the database based on a common state name. So I stripped out the extraneous data and replaced the spaces between the data points or values with commas and saved the file as a CSV. Now, to update the table, follow these steps. 1. Drop another button on the form with the text Update with Population. 2. Name the button BTN Update Pop. 3. Double-click the button to open up the code window. 4. Add the following code, and then it shows all the code for that button's click event. There's quite a bit of it. You can see that the code is quite similar to the previous, with the exception that we are using an update statement rather than an insert statement. And it did work. Here's the data in the table now with updated population and population rank values. Update table with the admission date. Next up is adding the admission date when the place became a state. The only somewhat tricky part of this is going to be converting the date from the human-friendly format in the file, such as December 7, 1787, to what the database is expecting. 1000-01-01 type of dates, also known as YYYYMMDD. In other words, Delaware will need to be converted to 1787-12-07 rather than remaining December 7, 1787. Note, too, that there is no rank value contained in the file, so we will have to add that. Fortunately, it should be quite easy as the list is in date order, ascending from earliest to latest, or most recent. Thus, it is in admission rank order already. Remember to remove the commas from the file so that the date values are in the format December 7, 1787 rather than December 7, 1787. In this way, the dates will not confuse our CSV reading code. But then, add commas back, but in the right spot. Replace the spaces between the two columns with a comma. Then save the file with the CSV file extension. So I think you know the rest of the drill. Add another button to the form and give it an appropriate name and text value. The main code for the addition of admission dates is, and then it shows that button click event handler code in the newsletter. The main difference between this code and the previous update methods are that the rank value is not taken from the text or CSV file, but calculated by the method we wrote above. We simply started with 0 as the value of the rank variable and incremented it each time through the loop. The only part other than that, which was really different from the previous updates, was that the date value had to be converted from the format it has in the CSV file to the format MySQL expects it to be in. You might find those utility methods we use to do the conversion somewhat interesting. Rather than clutter up the main method, the buttons click event handler shown above with a bunch of stuff, I broke out the code to convert the human-friendly formatted date values to what MySQL expects by first calling convert human to quadruple Y MMDD. And then it shows that method, utility method or helper method, which calls in turn other helper methods or utility methods, namely get day as DD and get month as MM, and it shows both of those methods also. It worked just fine, as you can see here, and then it shows a screenshot of the data in the database as it stands now with those dates added. There's nothing really new in the first utility method, convert human to YYYYMMDD, except that it breaks the line into elements at the space character rather than at the comma character, as previously seen. So instead of a comma-separated value file, it's a space-separated value file. Thus, a line like December space 7 space 1878 is broken into a string array with these three elements: December 7 1787 on three different lines. The getDay as DD utility method simply assures that the value takes up two places by prepending a 0 if the existing value is only one character long. In other words, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. So, if a value of 10 or greater is passed to getDay as DD, it simply returns exactly what it was passed without changing it. The getMonth as MM utility method is pretty straightforward too. It replaces a human-friendly month name such as September with its equivalent two-character designators such as 09 in that case. Update table with the book's image path and URL. Last but not least, we need to add the path to the book's image to the states table's book image path column and the URL of its Amazon page to the book URL column. Add another button as previously to update the table with the book image path value. Double-click the button you just added and insert this code in its click event handler. And then, of course, it shows that code. And there's quite a bit of it. The thing different about this code from the previous is that this is not a CSV file, but a regular, generic text TXT file, as it only contains one column of data, the state names. Thus, it is not broken up into a string array. The other interesting thing that happened was that at first it failed after adding a few rows. Why? Because I had thought 50 characters would be more than enough to hold all of the path values, but it was not. So I modified the states table again in DBWB, this time by changing the data type of the book image path column from varchar 50 to varchar 60. It worked like a charm bracelet after doing that. It didn't hurt anything that a few records had already been updated either, because it simply updated those same few again with the same values as before. It wasted 1/1,000,000th of a second perhaps, but I didn't really notice it. Here is the state of the table now, no pun intended, with the path to the book cover image populated in all cases. And it shows a screenshot of the actual data in the database table. Now add another button as previously to update the table with the final value, book URL value. Double-click the button you just added and insert this code in its click event handler. And again, it shows the code for that event. And Wallaby, the entire table has now been populated. Notice how Alabama is a special case, and there's a screenshot that shows that to be so. The unusual things about that part was that Alabama, as mentioned, for some reason, was a special case. It had the word new in its URL, and so it has to be handled with kid gloves, so to speak, as you can see in the code above. Also, I again misjudged how many characters I would need for this value, and this time I had to increase the size of the book URL column from bearcare 50 to bearcare 120. Now that we have the table fully populated, except for the 3 columns that the user can populate, which we'll get to later, in the next step, we will try our hand at querying the states table using the select statement to see what sort of interesting things we can find in it. Until then,